The Alpha King mocked the weak Omega until his wolf recognized her. What happens when the wolf everyone calls worthless turns out to be the one the prophecies warned about? For Alara Moonshade, life had always been a careful dance of invisibility. She was Omega, the lowest rank in the Silver Crest pack, born to parents who looked at her with something that resembled shame more than love. Her days were spent in the kitchens, her nights in a small room that smelled of old wood and forgotten things, and her existence defined by a single unspoken rule: don't draw attention, don't hope, don't dream of a mate bond that would never come, not for someone like her. Her scent, lavender and morning dew with the faintest hint of wildflowers, was considered too soft, too weak, a fragrance that marked her as less than even before she opened her mouth to speak. But when Alpha King Daemon Thornridge stood before the entire pack during the Harvest Moon ceremony and rejected her as his fated mate, with words that cut deeper than any blade, everything changed. And what happens next? No one was prepared for. Not the pack that cast her out. Not the parents who bound her power before she could even speak. And certainly not the ancient guard who had been searching centuries for the one the old prophecies called the matriarch, the wolf who would rise when the world needed her most, wearing fur of moonlight and eyes like the heart of winter itself. The Harvest Moon ceremony had drawn wolves from 3 territories. The great hall of the Silver Crest Packhouse blazed with torches, their light dancing across stone walls carved with the history of their kind. Alara had been scrubbing floors in the kitchens when her mother, Isla Moonshade, the pack's head healer, had appeared in the doorway with an expression Alara couldn't read. "You need to come to the ceremony," Isla had said, her voice flat. "Now." Alara's father, Marcus, had been standing behind her mother, and the scent of his anxiety, bitter coffee and ash, had filled the small space. Neither of them would meet her eyes. The pack hierarchy was absolute. Alphas stood at the top, their power radiating through every interaction, every command. They were born to lead, to dominate, to protect. Betas served as the pack's backbone, warriors, hunters, craftsmen who kept the community functioning. And then there were the Omegas, gentle, submissive, weak. Alara had been taught these words since she could walk, had felt them pressed into her skin like brands every time an alpha walked past, without acknowledging her existence, every time a beta shoved her aside in the market square. The mate bond was sacred among their kind, a gift from the moon goddess herself. When wolves found their fated mate, a mystical connection snapped into place, tying their souls together across lifetimes. The bond manifested physically as a glowing mark, usually appearing on the neck or wrist, a unique symbol that proclaimed to all who could see: this wolf is claimed, cherished, complete. Alara had never expected a mate bond. Omegas rarely received them, and when they did, it was with other Omegas or low-ranking betas. The idea that someone powerful might be destined for her had seemed like a children's story. The kind whispered around winter fires, but never truly believed. Then she had stepped into the great hall. The crowd had parted before her like water, hundreds of eyes turning to watch. Whispers rippled through the assembled wolves, confusion, curiosity, some dark anticipation that made her wolf stir uneasily within her. That inner presence had always been faint, barely a whisper of instinct, where other wolves described roaring certainty. She'd assumed it meant she was broken somehow, another failure to add to her long list of inadequacies. At the center of the hall stood Alpha King Daemon Thornridge. He was magnificent in the way of apex predators, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell to his collar and eyes like polished amber. His scent hit her the moment she drew close. Forest and embers. Ozone before a storm. And the sharp tang of steel. Power rolled off him in waves that made every wolf in the room lower their heads in instinctive submission. He ruled not just Silver Crest, but 3 adjoining territories, his word law across hundreds of miles, his strength unmatched by any alpha in living memory. And when their eyes met, Elara felt it. The bond snapped into place with such force, it drove the air from her lungs. Golden light blazed between them, visible to every witness, a thread of pure magic that proclaimed what her heart already knew. This was her mate, her fated pair, the other half of her soul. For one crystalline moment, hope bloomed in her chest like spring flowers after winter. Then Damon's expression twisted with disgust. No, his voice carried through the hall, each word a hammer blow. The moon goddess must be testing me. I refuse this bond. The crowd's whispers crescendoed into shocked murmurs. Rejections happened, but they were rare. Usually private affairs conducted with at least a veneer of dignity. To reject a mate publicly, before hundreds of witnesses, was unthinkable. "You're Omega," Damon continued, his lip curling. "Weak. Worthless. I am the Alpha King. My mate should be powerful, worthy of standing at my side. Not some kitchen rat who reeks of fear and lavender." Elara's wolf whimpered, a sound of pure anguish that resonated through her entire being. She tried to speak, to defend herself, but her throat had closed around the words. Damon stepped forward, towering over her. "I, Damon Thornridge, Alpha King of the Silver Crest Pack and territories beyond, formally reject you as my fated mate. May the moon goddess sever what she mistakenly bound." The pain was instantaneous and absolute. It felt like her chest was being torn open from the inside, like every nerve in her body had been set aflame. The golden thread between them didn't just break, it shattered, sending shards of agony through her soul. Elara collapsed to her knees, a scream tearing from her throat that sounded more animal than human. She felt the exact moment her wolf tried to retreat, to hide from the unbearable pain, and something else happened. Something that had been locked tight inside her for 23 years cracked, just slightly, like ice beginning to thaw. But she was too lost in agony to notice. When she could finally see again through the tears, Damon had turned his back on her. Beside him stood Celine Nightshade, a beautiful beta female with silver blonde hair and cold gray eyes. Her scent, cinnamon and iron with an underlying note of blood, spoke of ambition and cruelty in equal measure. "Take her to the borders," Damon commanded, gesturing to his personal guards. "Cast her out. She is no longer of this pack." "No," Elara whispered, finding her voice at last. "Please." "Guards." Damon's tone held no room for argument. 2 massive betas hauled her to her feet. Elara's legs wouldn't support her weight, so they dragged her, her feet scraping against the polished stone floor. The crowd parted once more, but this time the looks she received held pity, or worse, satisfaction. How many times had she served them without complaint? How many had she helped in small, invisible ways? None of them spoke now. None of them intervened. She caught sight of her parents in the crowd. Isla's face was pale, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Marcus looked away when Elara's gaze found his. "Mother!" Elara called out, her voice breaking. "Please!" Isla took one step forward, then stopped. Marcus grabbed her arm, holding her back. The scent of their fear was overwhelming. Bitter coffee, ash, and something else. Guilt. They smelled of guilt. "We can't," Isla whispered, though her voice carried in the shocked silence. "We can't help you." Those words hurt almost as much as the rejection itself. The guards dragged Alara through the pack house, down corridors she'd walked her entire life, past rooms where she'd worked herself to exhaustion trying to prove her worth. They didn't speak to her, didn't acknowledge her pleas or her tears. To them, she had already ceased to exist. The night air hit her like a physical blow when they finally shoved her through the outer gates. Winter was coming early this year, the temperature already dropping below freezing once the sun set. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon, heavy and dark and promising misery. "Alpha's orders," one of the guards said, his voice flat and professional. "You have until dawn to clear our territory. After that, you'll be considered a rogue wolf. We'll hunt you down and kill you on sight." They threw a single thin blanket at her feet, then turned and walked back through the gates. The heavy iron clanged shut with a finality that echoed in her bones. Alara stood there for a long moment, shivering in her thin dress, the same one she'd worn to serve at pack gatherings 100 times before. The scent of the approaching storm mixed with pine and frozen earth. In the distance, she could hear the howls of wolves beginning the night's hunt. She was in the buffer zone between territories now, the wild lands where pack laws didn't reach and rogue wolves roamed freely. She had no supplies, no warm clothes, no weapons, no shelter, and the first flakes of snow had begun to fall. Alara picked up the blanket with numb fingers and started walking. She didn't know where she was going. Away from Silver Crest, away from the pack house, where she'd spent her entire life believing she might someday belong. The bond severing still throbbed in her chest like an open wound, each heartbeat a reminder of what she'd lost. Her wolf stirred within her again, that faint presence pushing against her consciousness with unusual insistence. But Alara was too cold, too hurt, too exhausted to pay attention. She walked until her feet bled, walked until the snow fell so thick she could barely see 3 feet ahead, walked until she stumbled over a root hidden beneath the drifts and fell hard, her hands and knees sinking into the freezing powder. "Get up," her wolf urged. "Get up! Not safe here." But Alara's body wouldn't obey. The cold had sunk into her bones, making every movement feel like pushing through wet concrete. Her dress was soaked through, her hair plastered to her face with melting snow, and she couldn't feel her fingers anymore. In the distance, she spotted a dark shape through the swirling white, an old barn, its roof partially collapsed, but its walls still standing. It wasn't much, but it was something. She crawled. Actually got down on her hands and knees and crawled through the snow because her legs had given up entirely. The barn door hung askew on broken hinges, and she had to push it with her shoulder to create a gap wide enough to slip through. Inside, the air was marginally warmer, sheltered from the wind, if not the cold. Old hay littered the floor, and she could smell the ghosts of animals long since gone. Horses, maybe, or cattle. Alara pulled the soaked blanket around her shoulders and huddled in the corner farthest from the door. Her teeth chattered so hard she bit her tongue, tasting blood. The scent of her own fear hung in the air, acrid and sharp, and utterly unlike the lavender and morning dew that usually defined her. This is it, she thought, with a strange, distant calm. This is how I die. Rejected, lone, and frozen in a barn that isn't even mine. Her wolf pushed at her consciousness again, harder this time, but Alara was so tired. Too tired to fight, too tired to care. She closed her eyes. Time lost meaning. She drifted in and out of consciousness, her body system slowly shutting down as hypothermia claimed her. Once, she thought she heard howling in the distance, not the familiar sounds of pack wolves, but something deeper, more primal. She dismissed it as hallucination. Then she heard it again, closer this time. Alara forced her eyes open. The barn door was wider than before, and through the gap, she could see shapes moving in the snow. Large shapes. Wolf shapes. Rogues, she thought with the last of her consciousness. Come to finish what Damon started. She waited for the attack, for teeth and claws, and the quick mercy of death. Instead, warmth pressed against her left side, then her right, then her back. Ilara's vision cleared slightly, and she realized she was surrounded by wolves. Massive wolves, each one larger than any alpha she'd ever seen. Their fur ranged from midnight black to silver white, and when they looked at her, their eyes glowed with an intelligence that was distinctly other. Not quite wolf, not quite human. Something ancient and knowing. 1, 2, 3. She tried to count them, her thoughts sluggish. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 enormous wolves had arranged themselves around her, their body heat slowly bringing feeling back to her frozen limbs. They'd created a living cocoon of warmth and protection, and none of them showed any aggression. Instead, they watched her with what could only be described as reverence. "Why?" Ilara whispered through cracked lips. The largest wolf, a massive creature with fur the color of storm clouds and eyes like winter ice, shifted closer. When he looked at her, she felt a wave of power wash over her that made Damon's alpha presence feel like a candle compared to a bonfire. Then, impossibly, the wolf began to change. His form rippled and flowed, bones not snapping but moving like water, fur receding to reveal bronze skin marked with scars that spoke of centuries, not decades. Within moments, a man knelt where the wolf had been, tall and broad, with silver-streaked dark hair and those same winter ice eyes. His scent hit her. Aged oak, winter snow, pine, and the electric promise of an approaching storm. Authority incarnated in olfactory form. "We've been waiting for you," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "For so very long." Ilara stared at him, certain now that she was hallucinating. "What?" "My name is Cale Stormborn," the man said gently. "And these," he gestured to the 9 other wolves still surrounding them, "are the Shadow Guard. We've been searching for 200 years, following prophecies that most believed were mere children's tales. But the old texts were clear. When the moon turns red and the Alpha King rejects his fated mate, the matriarch will rise. Bound in infancy, freed by betrayal, she will come to us, marked by lavender and morning dew, wearing the scent of one who has known only suffering, but will learn to command the very earth itself." "You're insane," Ilara managed. "I'm nobody. I'm Omega. You're dying," Kyle interrupted, his expression grave. "Which we will address first. Ancient prophecies can wait for morning. Right now, we need to get you warm and fed." He shifted back to wolf form with the same liquid grace, then carefully gripped the back of her dress in his teeth and began pulling her deeper into the barn, to a corner where the hay was thicker. The other wolves moved with them, maintaining their protective circle. One of them, a sleek black female, disappeared outside and returned minutes later, dragging what looked like a deer carcass. Ilara wanted to protest, to demand answers, to understand what was happening. But her body had other priorities. The warmth was helping, but she was still dangerously close to losing consciousness permanently. Kyle shifted again, watching the transformation this time. Ilara noticed it truly was like watching water flow uphill, natural and impossible at once, and produced a knife from somewhere to butcher the deer. He cooked strips of meat over a small fire one of the other wolves built with their teeth and claws alone, using dry hay and wood scraps from the barn. "Eat," he commanded gently, holding out the cooked meat. "Your body needs fuel." Ilara ate. The meat was tough, and gamey but warm, and she felt strength beginning to return to her limbs. Kyle produced a water skin next, and she drank gratefully. The other wolves had all shifted to human form now, and she found herself surrounded by 9 men and women who looked like warriors from ancient legends. Each was scarred, powerful, and wore the kind of calm confidence that came from being absolutely certain of one's place in the world. "I'm dreaming," Elara said finally. "Or dead. Or both." A woman with auburn hair and bright green eyes laughed softly. "You're alive, little one. Barely, but alive." "Let me introduce my guard," Kale said, settling beside her with his back against the barn wall. He pointed to each person in turn. "Ronan, a man with black hair and golden eyes. Our tracker. Lysa, the auburn-haired woman. Our healer. Marcus, a scarred giant of a man. Weapons master. Elena, a woman with silver-white hair. Our scout. Finn, a lean man with fox-like features. Infiltration specialist." He continued through all 10 names, and Elara tried to commit them to memory. Thorn, Arya, Soren, Vera, and Cassius. Each one nodded to her when introduced, their expressions ranging from curiosity to something that looked like hope. "We are the Shadow Guard," Kyle continued once the introductions were complete. "Sometimes called the Unchained, depending on which old text you read. We were bound by prophecy centuries ago to serve the matriarch when she rose. Our lives extended beyond normal wolfspan, our powers enhanced, all in service to a future we could only glimpse in fragments. The prophecy said, when the moon bleeds crimson and betrayal severs fate's design, the matriarch will wake, born of moonlight, bound by fear, freed by pain. She will rise from ashes of rejection, wearing fur like starlight and eyes of winter's heart. The lost daughter will call the ancient wolves, and they will kneel. She will heal the broken, command the wild, and remake the very laws that sought to destroy her. She comes when night is darkest, when hope has died. When the weak are ready to inherit the earth, Lysa recited, her voice taking on a rhythmic quality like she was quoting from memory. Elara shook her head. That's not me. It can't be me. I can't even shift properly. My wolf is barely there. Your wolf was bound, Kyle said quietly. We've suspected it for some time, though we didn't know for certain until tonight. Tell me, do you feel different now than you did before the rejection? Elara paused, focusing inward. Her wolf was louder, more present. The faint whisper had become a voice, still weak but growing stronger with each passing moment. How? She whispered. The bond severing, Lysa explained, kneeling beside her. Whatever magic bound your wolf was tied to your mate bond. When that bond shattered, it created cracks in the binding. Your wolf is bleeding through. But who would bind an infant's wolf? Elara demanded. And why? Kyle and Lysa exchanged a look. That, Kyle said carefully, is a question we have theories about. But first, you need rest. Real rest. Tomorrow, we'll begin teaching you what you are, what you've always been. Elara wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a physical force. The Shadow Guard arranged themselves around her again, some in wolf form, some in human, creating a wall of warmth and protection that her Omega instincts recognized as safe, as pack, as home. For the first time in her life, surrounded by strangers in a collapsing barn during a blizzard, Elara felt like she belonged. She slept. She woke to sunlight streaming through gaps in the barn roof and the scent of cooking meat. Kale was crouched by a small fire, roasting what looked like rabbit. The other guard members were scattered around the barn in various states of alertness, some sleeping, some on watch, all of them moving with the easy coordination of people who'd worked together for lifetimes. "How do you feel?" Kael asked without looking at her. Ilara took stock of her body. Sore, bruised, but alive and warm. "Better." "Good. We have much to discuss." Over breakfast, rabbit and some kind of root vegetable Ronan had foraged, the Shadow Guard explained what they knew. 2 centuries ago, a prophecy had been revealed to the High Priestess of the Moon Goddess. It spoke of a time when the werewolf packs would have strayed from the old ways, when power would be valued over wisdom and might over compassion. In that dark time, a matriarch would rise to restore balance. "But prophecies are tricky things," Arya said, her violet eyes thoughtful. "They tell you what will happen, but rarely when or how. We've been searching for 200 years, following signs and portents, always one step behind. Until last night," Kael said, "when the moon turned red, a rare blood moon that occurs once in a generation, when we felt the mate bond snap into place and then shatter, when we followed the scent of lavender and morning dew to a dying Omega in a barn. We still don't understand the binding," Ilara said quietly. "Why would someone bind my wolf?" Lisa and Kyle exchanged another look. This time, Kael nodded. "We believe," Lisa said carefully, "that your parents knew what you were, or suspected." The matriarch's power would have been evident from birth, a presence too strong, too overwhelming for an infant's body to contain. They would have done what they thought was necessary to protect you. "Protect me?" Ilara's voice rose. "They made me weak. They let the pack treat me like dirt for 23 years. "They were afraid," Kael said quietly. "Afraid of what you represented. Afraid of the prophecy. Afraid that if anyone discovered what you truly were, they would kill you before you could grow into your power." The binding was cruel, yes, but it may have kept you alive long enough to reach this moment. Ilara felt tears burning in her eyes. "They didn't even try to help when Damon rejected me. They just let them throw me out." "Because the rejection was necessary," Lissa said gently. "Don't you see? The binding was tied to your mate bond. As long as that bond existed, even dormant, the binding held. But when Damon severed it," she trailed off meaningfully. "The binding broke too," Ilara finished, understanding dawning. "He didn't just reject me. He freed me." "Exactly." Ilara sat with that knowledge for a long moment. Damon had thought he was casting aside something worthless. Instead, he'd unlocked the very thing the prophecies warned about. "What happens now?" she asked finally. "Now," Kael said with a fierce smile, "we see what you can truly do." The next days blurred together in a cascade of revelations and transformations that Ilara would remember for the rest of her life. The Shadow Guard had claimed an abandoned settlement deep in the wildlands between territories, far enough from pack borders to be safe, hidden enough that few wolves even knew it existed. The first time Ilara's wolf truly spoke to her, she wept. "Sister," the voice said, strong and clear, and utterly unlike the whisper she'd lived with her entire life. "I have been here all along, waiting, watching, ready." "Who are you?" Ilara whispered, sitting cross-legged in the small cabin Kyle had given her. "I am you. I am us. I am the part they tried to bury, the power they feared, the strength you never knew you possessed. I am the matriarch, and so are you. I don't know how to be that. You will learn. We will learn together." That first shift was unlike anything Ilara had imagined. Kyle had warned her it would be intense, had asked the entire guard to be present in case something went wrong. They'd gathered in the clearing behind the settlement. 10 ancient warriors forming a protective circle around one terrified Omega. "Don't fight it," Lissa coached. "Your wolf has been caged for so long. When she comes out, it's going to be powerful. Let her flow through you." Elara closed her eyes and reached inward, touching that presence that now burned like a star in her chest. "Ready?" her wolf asked. "Ready." The transformation began, not with pain, but with a rush of euphoria so intense it stole her breath. Her bones didn't snap. They flowed, lengthening and reshaping with liquid grace. Fur erupted across her skin, not painful, but pleasurable, like shedding a weight she hadn't known she'd been carrying. She could feel herself growing, her body expanding beyond anything she'd thought possible. Energy erupted from her in waves, visible to everyone watching as silver-white light that made the air shimmer. The trees around the clearing bent away from the force of it, leaves rustling in a wind that came from nowhere. When the transformation completed, Elara stood on 4 legs and looked down at Kyle. Way, way down. She was massive, larger than any alpha wolf she'd ever seen. Her fur was pure white, with streaks of silver that seemed to glow with their own internal light. And when she glanced at her reflection in the nearby stream, she saw eyes that burned like winter ice lit from within. The Shadow Guard had all gone to one knee, their heads bowed. "She is the matriarch," Kyle said, his voice rough with emotion. "Just as the prophecy foretold." Elara threw back her head and howled, and the sound that emerged was nothing like the weak cries she'd made before. This was the voice of ancient power, of wild magic, of a force that had been building for 200 years. The howl echoed across the wild lands, and in the distance she heard other wolves answer. Not pack wolves, but wild things. Feral creatures that recognized a call to which they had no choice but to respond. Her first howl shook the very earth beneath their feet. Over the following weeks, Elara learned what it meant to be the matriarch. Her powers manifested in ways the prophecies had only hinted at. She could sense the emotions of every wolf within a mile radius, could feel their pain and fear and joy as if it were her own. When Thorn injured his leg during a training exercise, Elara found she could draw the injury into herself, healing him while barely feeling the wound herself. "Empathic healing," Lisa explained, wonder in her voice. "The old texts mentioned it, but we didn't think it would be this strong." She could command other wolves with barely a thought. Once, when a group of rogues tried to ambush Ronan during a scouting mission, Elara had simply pushed her will outward and told them to stop. They'd frozen mid-attack, unable to move until she released them. But it was the bond she formed with the Shadow Guard that changed her most profoundly. They trained with her daily, teaching her to fight, to hunt, to lead. Each member brought their own expertise. Ronan taught her tracking. Lissa taught her about healing and herbs. Marcus drilled her relentlessly in combat until she could hold her own against even him. And Kyle taught her what it meant to be an alpha, a true leader, not someone who ruled through fear and dominance like Damon, but someone who inspired loyalty through strength, tempered with compassion. "You're going to change everything," he told her one evening as they sat on the cabin's porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The old ways of hierarchy, Alpha, Beta, Omega, they're broken. They put power in the hands of those willing to be cruel to maintain it. "What would you have me do instead?" Elara asked. "Build something new. You have the power to command any wolf, regardless of their rank. Use it to create a pack where strength isn't measured by birth or dominance, but by character and choice." Elara felt Kale's scent wash over her. Aged oak, winter snow, pine, and storm. It was a scent she'd come to associate with safety, with home. The mate bond she'd lost with Damon had been fated, involuntary. A gift from the moon goddess that she'd had no say in. But what she felt growing between her and Kale was different. This was chosen, earned, built moment by moment through trust and respect, and a connection that went deeper than mystical bonds. "The prophecy said I would come when hope had died," Elara said quietly. "Do you think there are others like me? Other Omegas who've been told they're worthless when they're anything but?" "Undoubtedly," Kale replied. "And when word spreads of what you've become, they'll come seeking you, seeking hope, seeking a pack that doesn't judge them by rank. Then we'll give them one." Days turned to weeks. The abandoned settlement became a home. The Shadow Guard became family in a way her blood family had never been. And Elara became the matriarch, not just in power, but in truth. She was standing by the stream one morning, practicing her shifting. She could do it in seconds now, smooth and effortless, when Ronan appeared at her side, his expression grim. "Scout from Silvercrest territory," he said without preamble. "Watched him for 20 minutes. He's seen too much. Saw you shift." Ilara's blood went cold. "Does he know who I am? Your sense changed since you came into your full power. More wild now. But if he gets word back to Damon..." "Gather the guard," Elara said, her voice calm despite the racing of her heart. "They'll be coming." She was right. 3 days later, Soren returned from scouting the borders, with news that made her wolf snarl with fury. A war party from Silvercrest, at least 20 wolves strong, was headed their way. Damon himself led them, with Selene at his side. "They want the settlement," Kyle said, studying the map Soren had drawn. "Or they want you. Maybe both." "Let them come," Elara said quietly. Her voice held a note of command that made even Kale's wolf submit. "It's time they learned what they created when they threw me away." The Shadow Guard prepared for war. They'd fought together for centuries, knew each other's movements like breathing. But this was different. This time, they fought for their matriarch, for the future she represented, for every Omega who'd ever been told they were less. The Silvercrest war party arrived at dawn, when the mist still clung to the ground, and the world was caught between darkness and light. 23 wolves in formation, moving with military precision. At their head strode Damon in his wolf form, a huge gray beast with those amber eyes she remembered so well. His scent reached her before he did. Forest and embers, ozone and steel, now tainted with fury and something that smelled like regret. Beside him, Selene stalked in a sleek russet form, her gray eyes fixed on Elara with undisguised hatred. Elara stood in the center of the settlement, with the Shadow Guard arrayed behind her. She was in human form, wearing simple clothes, her white hair loose around her shoulders. To the approaching war party, she probably looked like easy prey. Damon shifted when he was 10 yards away, his form rippling from wolf to human with practiced ease. "I don't know who you are," he called out, "but you're harboring a rogue from my pack, an Omega named Elara Moonshade. Surrender her, and we'll leave peacefully." Elara felt a smile tug at her lips. He didn't recognize her. Her scent had changed too much. Less lavender and morning dew, more wild storms and moonlight. Her appearance had altered too. Her previously mousy brown hair now pure white. Her once dull brown eyes now the color of winter ice. "I don't harbor rogues," Elara said, her voice carrying across the clearing. "I am Elara Moonshade, and you're trespassing on my territory." The war party stirred, confusion rippling through their ranks. Damon's eyes widened, his nostrils flaring as he tried to reconcile what he was seeing with what he remembered. "Impossible," he breathed. "You were weak, broken. You should be dead." "You're right about one thing," Elara said conversationally. "I should be. You threw me out in a blizzard with nothing but a thin blanket. You sentenced me to death as surely as if you'd killed me yourself." She took a step forward, and waves of power washed over the clearing, making every wolf in the Silver Crest war party flinch. "But you made a mistake, Daemon. You didn't just reject a worthless Omega. You freed the wolf the prophecies warned about. You shattered the binding my parents placed on me to keep me safe. You unleashed the matriarch." Selene shifted to human form, her beautiful face twisted with rage. "Lies! You're nothing! You've always been nothing!" "Then prove it," Ilara said softly. "Attack me. Show everyone here how weak I am." It was a challenge no Alpha's second could refuse. Selene shifted back to wolf form with a snarl and launched herself at Ilara, moving with the speed and precision of a trained warrior. Ilara didn't move until the last possible second. Then she simply pushed, not with her hands, with her will, with the power that now lived in her bones and blood and breath. Silver-white light erupted from her, catching Selene mid-leap and hurling her backwards through the air like she weighed nothing. Selene crashed into a tree 30 feet away with a sickening crack, then slumped to the ground, conscious but clearly stunned. The entire war party took a collective step backward. "Now," Ilara said, her voice calm and clear, "let me show you what you rejected." She shifted. The transformation was instantaneous, faster than thought. One moment she stood on 2 legs, the next on 4. But this time, she let the full force of her power show. Silver-white light blazed around her, so bright several wolves had to look away. The ground beneath her feet trembled, and in the distance, thunder rumbled despite the clear sky. When the light faded, the matriarch stood revealed. She was enormous, easily twice the size of Daemon's wolf, with fur that seemed to be woven from moonlight itself. Her eyes blazed with power that was distinctly other, distinctly ancient, distinctly divine. Every line of her spoke of strength, of grace, of a force that had been building for centuries and would not be denied. The Shadow Guard shifted behind her, and the Silver Crest wolves finally understood their mistake. These were not normal wolves. Kyle, in his true form, was a monster of storm gray fur and winter ice eyes, standing even larger than most alphas. Ronan was a black beast, with golden eyes that seemed to see into souls. Lissa's auburn coat blazed like fire. Marcus was a scarred giant of a wolf who radiated barely contained violence. Each member of the Shadow Guard stood revealed as what they truly were. Not merely powerful wolves, but mythic guardians, dire wolves from the old stories, creatures that shouldn't exist, but did. The Silver Crest war party looked at the 11 massive wolves before them and understood they'd brought 23 soldiers to fight a force that could crush them without effort. Daemon shifted back to human form, his face pale. "Mercy," he said, and the word clearly cost him everything. The Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in 3 territories, was on his knees in the dirt before the Omega he'd rejected. "Please. Mercy." Ilara shifted back to human form, looking down at him with eyes that held no malice, only a terrible, infinite sadness. "You taught me that mercy is weakness," she said softly. "That compassion is something only lesser wolves indulge in. You told me I was worthless because I was kind, because I was gentle, because I didn't crave power and violence." "I was wrong," Daemon whispered. "I was so wrong." "Yes," Ilara agreed. "You were. But I am not you, Daemon. I am not cruel. I am not vindictive. I don't rule through fear." She looked at the assembled wolves, the war party on their knees, the Shadow Guard at her back, Selene still slumped against the tree. "But I am just, and justice must be served. She raised her voice so all could hear. Daemon Thornridge, you are stripped of your title as Alpha King. Your territories are forfeit. From this day forward, you are Omega, the rank you deemed so worthless. You will know what it is to be looked down upon, to be dismissed, to be considered less. And you will serve those you once commanded until you learn what true strength looks like. Gasps rippled through the war party. To strip an alpha of his rank was unheard of, a punishment considered worse than death. Selene Nightshade, Elara continued, turning her winter ice gaze on the woman who still looked at her with hatred. You are banished. You have 24 hours to leave these territories. If you're found here after that, the punishment is death. Selene bared her teeth, but said nothing. She knew when she was beaten. The rest of you, Elara said to the war party, have a choice. Return to Silvercrest and continue the old ways. Alpha over Beta over Omega, the strong crushing the weak. Or join me here, where a wolf's worth is measured not by the rank they were born to, but by the choices they make, the compassion they show, the strength of their character. One by one, the wolves of the war party bowed their heads in submission. Not to an alpha, not to strength won through violence, but to the matriarch, the one the prophecies had promised would come when hope had died, wearing fur like starlight and eyes of winter's heart. Elara looked out over the settlement, her settlement now, her territory, her pack. I am the matriarch, she said, her voice carrying the weight of prophecy and power and ancient promise. This is my territory. These are my laws. No wolf is lesser for their rank. No wolf is worthless for their kindness. And no wolf will be cast aside for being different. We are the beginning of something new. We are the future our kind forgot to dream of. We are the wild made pack, the broken made whole, the outcasts made family. She shifted back to wolf form one last time, threw her head back, and howled. The Shadow Guard joined her, 10 ancient voices raised in triumph. And then the war party, the wolves who'd come to conquer and stayed to kneel, added their voices too. The sound echoed across the wild lands, a declaration and a promise and a warning all at once. The matriarch had risen. The old ways were ending, and everything was about to change. And so Elara Moonshade's journey from rejected Omega to matriarch reached not an ending, but a beginning. In the days that followed, her settlement grew as wolves from across the territories came seeking the pack, where rank meant nothing and character meant everything. The Shadow Guard stood as her counsel, her protectors, her family. Kaetiel remained at her side, their chosen bond deepening into something that transcended the mate bonds of old, a partnership built on respect and trust, and a love that grew stronger with each passing day. Her parents came too, eventually. Isla and Marcus arrived 3 weeks after the confrontation, bearing the ancient texts that explained the binding they'd placed on her as an infant. They knelt before their daughter and confessed everything, their fear, their desperation, their terrible choice to lock away her power, to keep her alive. We were wrong, Isla whispered, tears streaming down her face. We were so wrong. Elara looked at them for a long moment, feeling her wolf stir with conflicting emotions. Anger, hurt, but also understanding. They'd done a terrible thing for what they believed were the right reasons. That didn't excuse it. But it meant there was a path forward, if they were willing to walk it. You can stay, she said finally, but you'll work for forgiveness, not from me, from every Omega you stood by and watched suffer because you were too afraid to speak up, from every wolf who learned to hate themselves because the old ways taught them they were worthless. They bowed their heads in acceptance. Daemon served his punishment without complaint, learning humility one brutal lesson at a time. Some of the pack members who joined Ilara's settlement made his life difficult at first, but Ilara intervened. "We don't become what we hate," she reminded them. "We don't let cruelty beget cruelty." As for Selene, she vanished into the wider world, but rumors occasionally drifted back of a silver-blonde she-wolf causing trouble in distant territories. Ilara made note of it. Some problems resolved themselves. Others required patience. The matriarch stood on the porch of her cabin one evening, Kyle beside her, watching the sunset paint their settlement in gold and crimson. The wild lands between territories were theirs now, claimed not through violence, but through the simple fact that no one dared challenge them. The Shadow Guard had become legend already, their story spreading from pack to pack, and with it, the tale of the Omega, who became queen. "The blood moon rises again in 6 months," Kale said quietly, pointing to the calendar they kept. "The ancient texts say it's when the barriers between worlds are thinnest, when old evils can return. Then we'll face them," Ilara said simply, "together." She looked out over her pack, her family, and felt her wolf's contentment resonate through every fiber of her being. She was no longer the terrified Omega who'd crawled through snow expecting to die. She was the matriarch, the wolf who'd risen from rejection wearing fur like starlight and eyes of winter's heart. She was the beginning of a new age, the herald of change, the proof that the old ways could be broken and remade into something better. And this was only the beginning. Thank you for listening to this tale of rejection and redemption, of power found in the darkest hour, and of a wolf who learned that true strength isn't measured by dominance, but by the courage to be kind in a cruel world. If this story moved you, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Ilara's journey? What would you have done in her place? Don't forget to like this video, share it with fellow wolf enthusiasts, and subscribe to our channel with notifications turned on so you never miss the next chapter in the Matriarch's saga. Because when the blood moon rises and ancient evils wake, Ilara and the Shadow Guard will stand ready to defend not just their pack, but all wolves who dare to dream of a better world. We'll see you in the next chapter.